driving in my car right off. Hiya. So, funny story, this video was meant to be a sort of holiday special for the channel and map, which is why the first edition of the Reimagining Deltarune Chapter 3 map went up on Christmas Eve. However, due to a severe underestimation of my ability to balance making complex Minecraft videos and programming in C, which is way harder than it sounds, this video and other plans for the channel have had to change drastically, starting with this video. For now though, let's start over. Welcome to Chapter 3, it's TV time. So yeah, if you couldn't tell by that intro, I've had every reason not to make this video. I have thrown out so many concepts because really, all I want to do is just make a normal Minecraft video, let go of everything that's plagued me in my creative processes the last year. And I think the best way to do that is to start over. We're building the TV world today, and that's all that matters at this point. Unlike the previous chapter, I started on this one almost immediately after uploading Chapter 2 to CurseForge. I'd weighed up all the rooms contained within Chapter 3 and concluded that this will not take anywhere as near as long as Chapter 2, which I understand if you didn't watch the second video. I mean, who wants to watch a 2-hour Minecraft video tangentially related to my insecurities at the time? The first thing I did was build the entrance to the Dark World underneath the house to set everything that we're going to build in this video up. And with that setup in place, let's go to the first stop on our journey to build this world. So, this is the terrain I pulled for the area. A pretty simple mountain island south of hometown in the World Seed. If you're new here or don't remember, this is how I formed the template for each Dark World, by taking an existing piece of world or biome and making it, well, darker. For this biome, I took the heavily layered tundra of the cold place and the style of the couch cliffs, and made it into a hybrid between Minecraft's snowy mountains and Mesa Badlands. Probably the most juxtaposed combination I've done so far, but I saw something in this that I could work with. This couch texture would be emulated using a stack of terracotta that would become the overall pattern of the mountain. You may ask, why didn't I use wool for this? Well, I didn't really like having wool as the main terrain block. Terracotta just felt more natural to me. Also, I filled in the empty space with water to cover the fact that the world just ends. Still working on that empty space between worlds. So now for the main building, this area had the same vibes as the cliff from Chapter 1, which made my life a bit easier because building it reminded me of how simple this project was when I started 19 months ago as of this video's release. Oh god, help me. The starting area was also a mutation of the main couch followed by a return portal underneath, and other than that there's not much more to say about these early parts other than the fact that the main pathway was a rough wooden mineshaft-like walkway across the cliffs and down several pathways of powdered snow. Getting to some of the meatier elements of this area, we have a few puzzles which again echo the cliffs from the first chapter, so they weren't too much trouble to implement here. Though as we left the thicker, snowy parts, the main path went through a forest area which was colored corresponding to the couch theme. You can't see it well here because polytone interferes with the colouring and it flips on and off depending on if it's updated to the current save when I filmed this. The puzzles on this path were, again, easy to implement, and I even copied the technique of extending the pathway through the ground to avoid having to deal with an extra steep slope. The pressure plate puzzle was also included in this cave. The last stretch of the path, merely meant to replicate the slide down to the part where you meet Tenor, was just to be a straight path up to the entrance of the TV world. How was I going to do the entrance to the TV world? Okay, so I originally had written in my script 4 minutes in and we're already improvising, but I then realised we were still on the introduction at this part in the last video, so come on, you gotta give me some credit for actually getting to the point this time. So this part of the cliffs weren't that interesting, so I wanted to change that a bit. I pictured the main TV world entrance as an open stage leading into the mountain. I had entrance marked, but the annotations don't show up in the replay, but what I did was clear out a ditch for the stage to go in at the end of the path, and to decorate things from there. The main palette I went with was dark oak for the wooden parts of the world, followed by an assortment of gold and glowstone to try and replicate. Then I just built some audience seating, which Look, I know this is a bit much for just an entryway, but if the last video was anything to go off of, this is what I mean by reimagining, okay? I did take some loose inspiration from my version of the stage from Undertale, so that was useful, I guess. Placing in the save point besides the stage, and that basically finishes us off for the Couch Cliffs. So that was a fine start to the TV world, setting things back on track with building before the second video even came out. Thanks to the views on that one, by the way. I know it's significantly less than the first one, but that's the blight of making a multi-part series in 2025. Now this is where the build process starts to take a bit of a strange turn. See, at this point in the game, you go straight from the game show part to the chapter and play through that for the next half an hour until you hit the green room. I'll get to the green room in the later half of the video, but this means that in order to seamlessly progress the project from where we are at now, we have to skip over half the chapter and jump straight to... Don't touch that dislike button, I promise there's logic to this. So skipping to the part where the team ditch Tenor and have to travel through the whole TV world, I carried this part on from the stage we started with to basically connect these two parts up and give the main TV world a little entranceway. After building the storage room for the gacha balls, I moved on to the first main TV room where I could suss out a palette for this area. I went to a few, but I settled on a gilded blackstone floor and a mix of glazed terracotta and gold to the walls. Not sure if it looks as good in default, my brother didn't like it, but I think it's alright for a room working with this colour scheme. Now, before we continue, I need to preface something. See, while the other two chapters made it easy to turn each area into something that resembles a lived-in location, this chapter is less about that, and more about being a contained TV studio. Now, this is not a criticism of the chapter itself. At the end of the day, each Deltarune chapter is like a season of Stranger Things, in that they're all unique adventures that partake in a larger connected narrative we get every few years. You may love or hate that statement depending on your beliefs, that sounded better in my head, but what I'm saying is nothing I make here is meant to affect anything objective surrounding the chapter, and is only my own way of adapting it in the context of this project. With that in mind, we're going to be building an entire theatre. Yeah. At this point in the session, I was carving out a massive part of the inner mountain that would form the biggest stage of the entire studio. Not the one where the main game show takes place, that's coming later, but it would give the world a greater centerpiece that could also inform the rest of the studio. Speaking of that, these rooms would wrap around this main theatre across 3 uniquely stylized floors. Ambitious? But this will become key to forming how the rest of the rooms will be structured and connect across the area. For example, this front pathway is a more folded version of the first few rooms with the shadow guys through the right hand side, before on the other side it cuts off into one of the video game rooms where you can find Lancer. Going back to the other side, I was now onto 2 of the main minigame sets in the studio, those being the Western set and the Monster Movie set. They both needed a bigger space to work with, so being the resourceful builder I am, I reused a location you might recognise if you've watched my other videos. Yeah, I basically copied the Metaton set from the Undertale world and used that to get the proportions of the sets here. What I mean by that is I removed all the cooking show parts, surrounded the room with terracotta resembling a sky backdrop, and did my best to make a single train cut diagonally while also including the windows from the minigame itself, and also some extra decoration like lights in the walls and other natural desert parts on the camera just for that extra detail to the set. The next hallway is a folding of the quiz parts of the area, which mainly required an assortment of large TVs. To not overcomplicate things, I made a static pattern on the TVs themselves and put the connecting game room at the end of the corridor. That was almost it for the ground floor hallways, but we still needed to do the monster set, so that went in the last part of the hallway. This was in a similar format to the previous one, except of course it wasn't built diagonally, which made my life slightly easier, as I just needed to do the same as earlier, but make it and the backdrop city themed and add a roundabout in the middle just like in the game. Also, my setup changed halfway through that last part, which is why the sound quality may be different to this recording. Sorry, I bought a bunch of new accessories for my desk and a new laptop and stuff. So with the lower floor now done, this next part, being the sort of back rooms between the monster set and the Light the Sky set, is going to go behind the stage area this back part was meant to have. The cards and stuff were placed out back. I still had the structure files from when I built Castletown, so they weren't too much of an issue. Then I ran the stealth zone along the entire back of the theatre area I was planning. On one side was the first stealth part to the first trash can, and on the other was a longer stealth part spanning several spotlights across the back wall, leading to most of the remaining rooms in this segment, including the room with several trash cans after the first stealth zone and the maze area. I know it seems like we're going at a bit of a breakneck pace, but you have to realise that a lot of rooms in the area could be folded together in a way that opens up the TV world so it fits in more of the context of being a Minecraft map. You know, it's not like Castletown where there were several individual segments and a large castle that had to be considered. Anyway, the theming of the maze was mixed up a bit using powdered snow so I could retain the effect of the darkened paths. It kind of works and comes out on a loom, which is essentially a mirror of the other side, which is a little bit of a trend as we go into the latter half. Speaking of mirror images, this next part was mirrored from the other side and moved around a bit to fit in a staircase in the next floor. Part of the corridor was also cloned over as a way of implementing the water cooler. Please, I have a family. The next cluster of rooms, which make up the bulk of the second floor at the moment, cover the Shadowman offices and their surrounding areas. It was basically the last chunk before the Lightners live stage, which I kinda saw as a second checkpoint in terms of progression. This part was a bit rough. The staircase up to floor 2 went down alright. I just wrapped that around a copy of the western set since there was a second one of those up there. Up top, I wanted to connect this next bit to the backstage area so the offices serve as a sort of control room for the TV parts, which led to the next bit, looking over everything else before moving to above the stealth zone. Going back to the staircase, it was still a bit messy at this point, just because I didn't have a definite plan for that until later. There were some decorative lights for the hallway, but after that I mostly just cracked on with the office room, which was quite straightforward, just copied the same chunk of TV screen for the whole length of the room. At this point in the build process, it was clear the plan to build the main stage around the TV world was not working as well as I hoped. I mean, I can't even in good conscience do a cinematic for this one because look at this is just a goddamn building site / excavation stone for the inner mountain. No amount of shades could make this look presentable yet. With that in mind, this was where I went back to the drawing board. Not in terms of the build itself, this right here was staying no matter what. I mean, I put so much into it to scrap it now. What was changing was the approach to the process that I not only planned out at the start of things, but kinda laid out the first plan for this video. As mentioned at the start, I had thrown out many ideas for this video, and in combination with a few breakdowns in October at the fact, for a moment it seemed like we were reapproaching the content-fueled doom of Chapter 1, undoing the positive development of Chapter 2 along the way. Therefore, I think it's important to address those scrap plans in a little intermission before we can confidently move on to the next part of the build. I was going to save this for later, but I think it's better to get it out now, because I do kind of regret going on about Cyberpunk for as much as I did in the last video. This entire chapter, including the first iteration of the video, had a large amount of external inspiration that I was going to revolve the video around. However, this time it was more extensive and timely, because it was going to be based off the worst thing I could think of. British reality TV. Specifically this zombie-ran YouTube account singing competition, which may have sent me into a nostalgia-induced ego trip because, like Ascole's favourite show, it was cancelled, and the plan was to make a build process as a projection of nostalgia, which is why I wanted to save it for the end so I could fully indulge before actually getting to it, but it turns out old reality TV is not something to carry a full Minecraft build on, so I just had to keep it in the inspiration zone for now. Honestly, it's for the best looking back now. As this build expands in size and scope, please understand that the increased pressure and shorter Deltarune likely requires me to get a bit experimental with video ideas. Just wait and see what I have cooking for Chapter 4. I do have plans to ingrain in just a little bit of British Christian lore. You'll know what that is when I get to Chapter 4. This is the craziest Minecraft series on YouTube. Wish me luck on the next build. I had had to break the night vision version of this time-lapse into chunks because it kept crashing the game, but to start I played around with a few designs for the structure of the theatre. I wasn't sure at all how to do the ceiling, so I mostly brute forced a lot of curved supports until I decided on just moving them up slightly as to not obstruct the view from the main studio. The main idea was a mixture between the modern and traditional parts of the theatre. In other words, like the elegant dark oak and the techie copper. Just take any theatre you've been to and then mix it with a TV studio. That's pretty much what I was going for here. Ended up creating a nice arch around the stage zone, but the upper part had some pretty empty space, so to resolve that, I built a circle area featuring the armchair design from the main house around that part. This is where things are going to ramp up in terms of making parallels to the hometown equivalent, and you'll see that more in a bit. But this circle was basically based around being a secret fourth floor to contribute to the space between the green room's exit and the cold place. Again, you'll see that more in a bit. For now though, I moved on to the front of the stage, which I already told you is a product of great projection, but I don't need night vision to show you this since it does a good job of lighting up the entire front of the theatre. Like, a really good job. There was some extra space between the studio hallways and the open stage parts, at least on the upper floors where the staircase was, so in another moment of improvisation, I made these into booths, like VIP areas and such. To add to the parallels, these are all clones of the living room from hometown, which, yeah, the implications of this run quite deep and it's beginning to show how much meaning I'm inferring from chapter 3, oh my god. But it looked good on the actual build, so that's fair enough at least. Although, when reflecting it to the other side, it did mean I had to redo the monster movie stage from earlier in the same style as the western stage. Come on, you sorts. Personally, I like this version more, whether it's a result of iteration on that original design or not. It did feel more spacious and detailed than what I did earlier in the video. Man, I still have the auditorium to do. I'm so tired. So after refining these side sections so that they're actually coherent, I touched up other bits of the auditorium, like the ceiling, which I gave a wooden style at the front and RGB screen around the circle area, and then went to the seating, which is taken from my Hotland build again when I made the theatre part for that build. I like building theatres. One thing to note here is that I added 2 rows per layer of blocks and inverted them to lighten the slope a bit, which was definitely a benefit for how it turned out. And finally, the stage at the front of the theatre was made from a mix of obsidian and dark oak as to further mix the modern and traditional styles, plus I just liked the cross of obsidian in the shades, it looks good. A soundstation thing was in the middle with seats surrounding it and a couple staircases going up to the stage. Lighting was mildly problematic because obviously I can't cast a complete spotlight onto the stage and light everything up that way, so I did the only sensible thing and put the lights on the stage itself with redstone running underneath it. After some extras to the side, like more offices on the bottom parts, I went back to finishing up the contents of the second floor by cloning some of the TVs from earlier on in the build. The extra puzzle parts of the section went around the corner of where you cross the office parts, which prompted me to remove the awkward bridge, instead opting for heading around the inner corner formed from those puzzles. Then for the longer stealth hallway, that ran across the back wall of that previous office room and into a mirror of the other corner, linking things up to the top floor. I also decided to switch out the TVs just to cover that room after the save point, but that concludes the contents of the main stage. Psst, fun fact, if you want to look at this nostalgia I put into this build, just go on the save point. It's the main stage where you'll find a small reference to X Factor. Just a little Easter egg for you all. I have to say, even though my original plan was to build this at the end, I think things turned out alright. I even got the chance to improve the previous part, so that's good at least. Yes, this is a case of building a relatively simple area on a scope that nobody asked me to, kind of like last video, but to be honest, I'm starting to get used to it a bit. While doing the top floor, I started doing the usual thing where I reflect on the build thus far before going into the final few recordings, mainly the projection stuff I mentioned earlier. I think chapter 3 be called a filler chapter by others, and maybe this video's size reflects that when the last video was 12 seconds longer than 28 Years Later, which is a really good movie by the way. But see, chapter 3 is more than that, maybe not in its world, but maybe in its story. The fact that Tenor knows Chris personally, kind of said to me that this is a different type of chapter to the others, one a lot more personal to its main character. And hell, that's kind of applied to me. I literally made the A-rank room a nostalgia chamber for everything I wanted to get at in this video, and then scrapped because I didn't want to dwell on it too much. You can't get mad. I used to watch Love Island when I was 13. So yeah, you may have been able to pick up the fact that I built the TV world with those thematic elements in mind, and this is normally the part of the video where I pull out the subtext that runs across the entire video, but unfortunately, I don't really want to do that this time. I mean, the video's short and I don't want to pad it out too much this time, even though I doubt it scares people off. But the theme I wanted to go into felt less warranted for a Minecraft video. The more this chapter became about the escapism within Deltarune, the more I realised this conversation is much broader than I thought and deserves its own video. So yeah, I'm declaring that I, Hal, will be making video essays in the near future, including the executive decision to investigate escapism and Deltarune outside the confines of Minecraft content. I'm still working out some of the stuff surrounding that. I'll be testing some of that later in the month. Just stick around to see. That video about escapism though will take a while, trust me. Returning to the Minecraft stuff now, there's a few more things we need to fold back into the video before we blaze through the final two areas of the chapter. First off, there was the kitchen where the cooking minigame takes place. I wanted to make this a sort of cafeteria area, so I carved out something similar to the entrance room and lined it with wood to give it a similar look to the game. At the back I made two exits, one directly connecting to the green room and the other to the outskirts where the last TV world rooms would be. The main counter was placed between them and formatted in a way that kinda sells the idea of the minigame enough. There was also some extra seating dotted around the place with candles on top of them, again just to further give that cafeteria vibe to the place. Then I moved back down to the backstage area and covered the last secret room, that being the storage area. I didn't mention this earlier because I was talking about X Factor, but the blue terracotta was meant to sell the background of these rooms like the ones in the game, the likes of which covered the entire back wall, and I dotted with lights to simulate the sort of star effect to it. This backdrop also being lined with studio elements to blend it in more with the rest of the backstage area. Lastly, to cap off this massive-ish section, was the cold approach to the green room, which I took a pretty different approach to. See, the reason I opted to add a direct connection to the green room via the cooking show is because I wanted to do something else for this part. Remember at the end of the last video where I snuck in a weird root dimension to represent the contents of that root? Well, I wanted to do something like that this time. However, the root is mostly absent this time to make way for the sword root, which I'll get to later on. But as a small little addition to this chapter, I went and accounted for another root in the game, which I still haven't played but wanted to put in anyways, the egg root. The egg root has many elements to it, which is why I probably didn't find out about it until I really immersed myself in the fandom last year. But to simplify things, at certain points in the map, I placed a point that warps you to a cherry tree where you can find an egg. They're not too different from the entry points in the game, so if you know where they are in the game, you'll be able to find them here, so be sure to look out for them when you play the actual map. Download in description. Okay, finally, the TV world is done. I'm not going to ramble anymore, there's just a few more parts of the world to cover, so let's just get straight to them. I'm not doing a dramatic final week this time, because at this point the entire project schedule had collapsed and I was kind of spiraling in the ninth circle of hell, thinking about how the hell I'm going to put this out for Christmas, which I eventually didn't do. But that doesn't stop us from cracking on with this green room, cold place fountain. We're doing all of them in the next part, so what do we say we finish this crisis together? If you haven't worked it out already from the way I built this, the main part of the second floor was going to be where the green room was. I mean, there's literally green grass around that part, I don't think I could have made it any more obvious. This middle part here accounts for the central living room area of the green room and set up the rest of the space with the paths going across the floor. At the crossroads, I centered things around a TV statue quite similar to the one downstairs, and placed the two TV areas on either side of it. Next to those TV areas were the shops, which I split into two to account for lambs, the peak British rep in the game, and the vending machine. Okay, that one was mostly to fill in space, but regardless, on the right side, if you're facing the windows, I added special rooms for each rank. I already mentioned channeling all this chapter's cringe projection into my own A-rank room, and even though that wasn't recorded here, I still made faithful versions of every other rank room. B and C were self-explanatory with the gacha balls and the water cooler. I'm begging for mercy right now, water cooler. The T-rank room was built next, going around the corner from the main three and basically being a copy of the TVs on the floor above, but with a vague shape of tennis slapped onto them. The S-rank room went on the other side, with the same format, but replacing the rest of the rooms with the route down to the studio. As for that aforementioned S-rank room, don't worry, I intended to keep the crappiness of the room completely faithful to the game. Although I did move the controller stack to the end because I still needed the Z-rank room, and for those wondering what the Z-rank room was, it was literally a tunnel to the other end of the theatre. Intentional crappiness at its finest, everyone. So yeah, I switched out the grey terracotta of the rest of the floor to some damper looking regular terracotta and mud bricks. Went for that kind of standard dressing room style for the main bit, and then moved to the original game room, which I made similar to the rest of the area, even repurposing one of the previous TV designs for the room. The next part was moving to the empty end of the bottom floor, which moves away from the established traversable parts and into the main studio of the game show. Through the big game door next to the S-rank room, I put a staircase down to those empty parts of the lower floor, connecting right on the other side of where we started down there. This was mostly due to wanting to fill in some of that last empty space on that floor and to provide some presence for the room most major plot points take place in. The stage went in the corner and kind of generally merged together the formats of the previous studios. I made the walls green like upstairs and lowered the flooring a bit so the stage had more headroom. Ended up looking quite alright for what it was in the end. Also for the names on stage, I went for a few designs before ending up on just regular signs of arm stands put into it, and Chris's one said KYS because I thought it would be funny in game. The last empty hallway had 3 rooms attached on the end that I numbered accordingly. These rooms are, of course, the rooms where the boards would be located and played. This is where I have to finally address the presence of the boards in this map, or lack thereof. Because due to the game-within-game nature of these boards, I had a hard time figuring out how I'll integrate them into the map. That I ended up just not doing them in the end. Initially it felt for the best, but after the release of the map, it did feel like the chapter felt a bit more empty without them. So, I opted to add them into this video at the last minute, and, well, let's just say things got to a point where I decided it would be best to make a separate video for them, because I couldn't delay this video any longer, and I just ended up doing so much for that. Sorry if you're disappointed. There were a lot of shortcomings I've been trying to contend with throughout this video, so let's just consider part 2 to be the apology video, except without the ukulele and the false emotion. For the rest of this part though, well, I think it's about time for us to go home. It's time to build the cold place, I mean. The cold place is kind of in 2 parts. The parental lock zone that gives us puzzles and more, I'll just call it fan service for Lazai and not elaborate on it, and the outside of the studio leading to the fountain out of here. Obviously, the parental lock corridor would go around the back of the green room, which would connect to the fire exit part of the cooking set and cover the red carpet part of the green room. That is a lot of connections, I realise. This part of the green room was easy. I mean, it's basically an extension to connect to the rest of the TV world, and in this map's case, the way out, which I moved here to connect to the back corridor that would connect to the kitchen's other fire exit via staircase. This back staircase was made out of black stone to give it a bit of a backrooms-like style. Well, not exactly backrooms, like the style I kind of like about this place is the liminal nature that feels like the edge of the greenscape, where everything unravels, but again, that's for the escapism video I'm making. This parental lock hallway comes out in the circle area, which would lead across to the exit through the very top booths. I like to think of the circle being parental lock, it's just a bit funny. The booths lead to bridges above the stage on both sides, the exit only being on one side, but don't worry, I added a dramatic looking bridge above the stage to make up for that. As for the exit, I mean, it's giving Digital Circus, but I don't care, I like it. Okay, Saturday, the 22nd of November. What time was it again? I can't remember. 1:30 PM, that's an actually normal time for once. We were a few weeks ahead and behind both planned schedules, but I was past the point of caring. It's here. It's the final stretch of the dimension, so like always, it's time to break out the big tunes. I'd like to see the Fun Gang play this on stage. What did you not expect a needle drop in this video? This game helped in my recovery. There was a ravine on the other side of the door that could be linked up with a bit of digging, which would make up some more parental lock stuff, mainly the stuff from the second time we go there, integrated as a copy of the house with no lighting except for the TV. Inside the TV as well, of course. The path went along to the end of the ravine that was lined with sea lanterns to give the same effect as the rest of the cold areas, and also to overlook the fountain, which was marked for the corner of the cliffs. Around this overhanging point, I started carving a pathway up to the top of the ravine. I really had to work around some of the finer edges in order to get a coherent and usable path. I think what I did here went in nicely with the terrain for what I had to work with. At the top of this area, as well as the fountain, there was also the huge Christmas tree where Toyo was being held. Of course I was to build that on a large scale, I mean, what do you expect at this point? The template for this was a normal large spruce tree, though with an extra layer I added to the bottom myself to thicken things up a bit. For decoration, I had the full arsenal of lanterns scattered throughout the tree, with redstone and coal in addition. On the bottom I added the gacha ball, some extra presents, and a string of lights surrounding the tree for extra decoration. Another code line from the shaders might make this look better than it might be without the shaders, but it still looks good either way. Then there was the fountain in the corner of the cliff, so not dwelling it too much since the method that I built it with is relatively unchanged from what I did in the last video. But all I'll say here is that this one did turn out a bit messier, which I ultimately see as a good thing. That's what I was aiming for anyways, you know, for the water to be a bit all over the place amongst the wisps that I built into the fountain. I still needed a path to the actual fountain, but it was close enough to the pathway this time that I was just able to make an oak mineshaft bridge around to the final exit, which I decorated with some dark looking crystals. Then the final thing here was an extra pathway over the hill indicated by a trail of undying spheres. You know what this is if you've played it. It's another door, like the one in Castletown. I don't actually know what I'm doing with this yet. You can still exit using the fountain, so this is mostly a pointless addition. But that's it, Deltarune Chapter 3 is mostly complete now. Also, for the Nights in the Woods fans in the audience, don't worry, I do want to build that in Minecraft at some point. I'm saving some good stuff for then. Stay tuned. I did do some final few touch-ups on the last day since I still had some time to kill, so I improved the chapter's egg room with some more Game Boy lighting and banners revolved around the other eggs in substitute of the dialogue that plays in that area. Then I returned to the front stage to finally add something of note to one of these screens, this one being the TV time title card. You traverse through both parts, the top part being a connection from the light stage exit up to the green room via the back corridors, and the bottom being one of those warp zones I normally build off camera, so that's a treat for you at least. So, to finally round off this video, let's have a cinematic look at our completed TV world. I must admit, I do still get kind of nervous and you're dropping a bunch of inspirations and stuff throughout the video, but not only did Night in the Woods help me cool down, it put some stuff in perspective. I shouldn't hold on to the past, even when the present is a bit hard. I shouldn't dwell on my shortcomings throughout this build process. And most importantly, I certainly don't need another season of X Factor. I'm too old for romanticizing that stuff in the modern day. Something about being released to the obligation to end the year on a bang with this video kinda helped in the end. Not just because I could just end it with the chillness of Night in the Woods, but because I could think about what I'm doing more. Yes, this map may be becoming more than just an expression of my human creativity, but the best thing to do in the end is press on and continue to make this the best project I can make it. And if it takes a whole lot of hurt to do that, then at least I'm glad I'm putting that hurt on YouTube for the world to see. Thanks for watching. Hey, I don't really have a script for this last part. I just wanted to come in and tell you all how I'm doing and apologise for how long this video's taken despite its length. I've been kind of exhausted recently, I'm back at university and now I only get like 2 nights in the week to actually work on video stuff, and I've been exhausted the rest of the time. I think I've had like 7-8 coffees this week just to keep me going. Yeah, it's been tiring. As for what I plan on doing next, I want to move away from the Reimagining Deltarune series for quite a while, mostly because I realise that I've been thinking about Deltarune and this project for nearly a year now non-stop, and I think it's gonna get to a point soon where I do properly burn out, which I really don't want to do with this one because I think I'm really tapping at something here. But I have had a go at writing other videos, mostly non-Minecraft ones, specifically the escapism one which I got you guys to vote on, and it's been such a refreshing experience doing that. I've had other videos in the pipeline that have really had me going as well. Don't worry, I'm still going to do that promised second part. I've done most of the recordings for that already. I just want to have a period where I can focus on other stuff and not overload my brain with Deltarune, and I think that's currently paying off and helping me refresh a little bit. So I want to thank you again for watching and apologise one last time for how uncertain the past few months have been. Fate has not been nice to these videos, and not just talking about the algorithm. My Xbox account got restricted this morning, and I am literally uploading this recording this 12 hours before upload. But I'll see you next time, I guess.